Conservatism, planning to end the social care crisis, get a good deal for Britain in Brexit and provide strong and stable government. The Prime Minister said that Britain was facing its most difficult period in 60 years as she launched the Conservative manifesto in Halifax, pledging to confront 5 great giant challenges.
I've negotiated for Britain in Europe, and I know that the best place to start is to be clear about where you stand and what you want. That's why I have been clear that we do not seek to fudge this issue, to be half in and half out of the EU. The British people made their choice. I respect that. We need that strong and stable leadership now more than ever. For the next 5 years will be among the most challenging in our lifetime, a defining period for our nation, a turning point for Britain that will determine the kind of country we are and the kind of future the generations that come after us will see. That is why now, more than ever, Britain needs strong and stable government.
Well, let's take you through some of the key policies announced by Theresa May a little earlier today, starting with social care. And people won't be made to pay for their care if their assets are worth less than £100,000. That's up from the current level of just over £23,000. Theresa May reiterated her party's commitment to reduce net migration to the tens of thousands, something she didn't achieve as Home Secretary. Firms will have to pay an immigration skills levy of £2,000 for every foreign worker they deploy. There's an end to free school lunches for all infant pupils in England. Instead, free breakfasts will be offered for those in primary years education. There was, of course, a promise to not increase the level of VAT, but no repeat of the 2015 pledge to not raise national insurance or income tax. Well, let's speak to our political editor, Faisal Islam, who's in Halifax, where Theresa May unveiled the manifesto earlier today. Good evening, Faisal. Let's just focus on one specific from the manifesto. And I understand that things do change in politics, but we've had 7 years of the political parties battling it out to say who could be tougher on tackling the state of the nation's economy. Now we discover that we're not going to be rid of the deficit until the middle of the next decade.
Yes, exactly. And that, I think, is the key takeaway for me from the manifesto. Not essentially about the new policies that are in it, but in fact the policies that have been taken out of it or changed, the constraints loosened, the straitjackets taken off, because you can see why Theresa May has gone for her own mandate with some of her own signature policies, but also why she needs freedom of her own freedom of movement, if you like, room for manoeuvre in what might be choppy waters. A big example is what you've just mentioned, the issue of the deficit. That's now the target to eliminate that, not until 2025, 10 years after George Osborne first vowed to deal with it in the 2010 election campaign. That gives some room for manoeuvre for austerity to be for the accelerator pedals be taken off austerity. There's also those promises on the triple lock for pensions. That's become a double lock. That means that if inflation is low or earnings are low, you don't have to raise the state pension by 2.5% under this double lock, as you had to under the triple lock last September. The tax lock, the occasionally derided policy that was important, though, to David Cameron in 2015, that's gone as well, replaced with a promise that taxes will be kept as low as possible. But it does leave open the possibility that at some point in the next 5 years, some of those taxes could go up, perhaps for a long-term solution to the social care problem. Also, in some of the detail, again, committing to the 0.7% aid target, but changing the definition either in negotiation or by law to allow other forms of spending to count as development aid, whether that's military peacekeeping or perhaps something else. Some have suggested that payments to Eastern European countries or something like that could count as aid in the future. So there's a number of options opened up in this manifesto that weren't there for Theresa May as Prime Minister under the 2015 manifesto. So you can see other reasons why she called this election from how she has shaped this manifesto. In general, though, it had more kind of political philosophy in there, talking about conservatism isn't about untrammelled free markets, it's not about libertarianism, there'll be no ideological crusades. That's an attempt to send a message to those Labour voters that this is not about Thatcherism. So it would seem to be Mayism, but she also denies it's about Mayism, though perhaps only a true Mayist would deny their Mayism.
Faisal, thank you. We'll return to the general election in just a moment, but just to bring you some breaking news reaching us from New York, indeed from the city's Times Square. We're being told that a speeding vehicle has struck a number of pedestrians on the pavement in Times Square. The New York Police Department has, for the time being, closed off the area. A Reuters witness, the Reuters news agency, a witness said at least 10 people were being treated for injuries on the ground after the collision at the Midtown Manhattan tourist site. We'll continue to monitor events in Times Square, but a speeding vehicle has struck a number of pedestrians, at least 10 of them being treated for injuries. Well, let's return to the Conservative manifesto, and changes to social care are forming a big part of it. Here's Theresa May's take.
Those elderly people who've been worried about how they pay for care in their home won't have to worry about that in future. They won't have to pay while they're still alive. Nothing will be paid. They won't have to sell their home while they're living in it. What we also see is that those people who are worried that their savings are going to have done the right thing and saved through their life and worry their savings will dwindle to virtually nothing, we're quadrupling the threshold at which assets will be protected to that £100,000.
And let's speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's got more on this. John, a point that some people are making is that if you die from a sudden illness, say a heart attack, your children will, in essence, get everything that you wanted to pass on to them. However, if you have a degenerative illness that requires treatment for a number of years, the amount that you can give them will be eaten away, that leading to some people describing this as a dementia tax.
That's one claim that's being made. Another, of course, is that homes would have to be sold off after people die. You heard Theresa May say just then that the home will not have to be sold while people are still living in it. One criticism is that families are going to be left with huge debts, and that homes left in an inheritance would have to be sold off later. Faisal mentioned choppy waters there. This is a flagship policy which is also sailing into some turbulence because it has not had a universal welcome today by any means. There have been claims that it's a death tax. That has been denied by Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary. But there are criticisms, and one of those is that people will have to rack up big debts. Mr. Hunt has said that at the moment families can be cleaned out, as he put it, by the cost of care. He says that under these proposals, up to £100,000 can be passed on to relatives. Jeremy Corbyn has led criticism from opposition parties. He claims that pensioners are being betrayed by this manifesto. He says she's hitting older people with what he calls a nasty party triple whammy. He talks about the pensions, removing the winter fuel allowance, which is going to happen. Wealthier pensioners are going to lose that. And as he puts it, forcing those who need social care to pay for it with their homes. Now, comparisons are being made with a plan that Andy Burnham came up with a few years back when he was Health Secretary. At the time, the Tories said that was a death tax. They even had posters attacking it in a previous general election. Another critic is someone who advised the Cameron coalition government. That is Sir Andrew Dilnot. He is a specialist and an expert in this field. He has said that this policy could potentially leave people, as he puts it, helpless.
I think people are in a position where it is going to be frightening. If you need social care, let's imagine that you or your partner develops dementia as things stand at the moment, and as they will be after these proposals have come into place, you stand to lose everything. So what we have in effect under these proposals is a form of inheritance tax that hits people that are unlucky enough to need substantial social care. That seems a very strange thing to do. If we want to make inheritance tax more punitive, which some people might want to do, we should make inheritance tax more punitive, not have a system that particularly targets people who are unlucky enough to have a condition like dementia or very acute arthritis.
So Sir Andrew Dilnot is one of the people who says that this is an anomaly, that it will hit people with a long-term illness like dementia. Now, in the manifesto, the Conservatives talk about bringing in a green paper, that's a consultation paper, in the autumn. So we are still some way off seeing legislation on this. There's plenty of room for tweaks and changes to these proposals. But this is one of the big issues, as Theresa May has identified, one of the 5 big challenges. And there are those who say that this next Parliament, even though it may not run for 5 years, because they're talking about scrapping the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, may come to be defined by the way the government tackles social care as much as it is by Brexit. So it's as big an issue as that. And Theresa May has never ducked away from saying what a big issue it is. But of course, some of these proposals have not had a wholehearted welcome, and does seem to be some anomalies here.
John, thank you. Well, I just want to return to that story in New York City, in Times Square, in fact, where a vehicle has ploughed into a number of pedestrians. This is single source for now from a witness from Reuters news agency, but they are saying that at least one person is dead after the vehicle had moved off and into a group of pedestrians. This Reuters witness saw 7 individuals being loaded onto stretchers there as well. Let's bring in Sky's Dominic Wycott, who can perhaps just elaborate a little as we look at these pictures of Times Square. Dominic, for those who have not travelled to it, I mean, how easy is it for pedestrians to get around? It looks to be an awful lot of traffic there.
Yeah, Neil, we're looking at pictures, I think, of that have been taken shortly after the incident in Times Square. These are, it looks like firefighters, members of the public, and other paramedics and police, and they are dealing with, it seems, the victims of this accident or incident, whatever it is. It's too early to say at the moment. It's happening directly outside we think it's the NASDAQ stock exchange end of Times Square. What we know seems to have happened is that the vehicle mounted the sidewalk at some speed and has ended up on bollards, and that has, on the way, has struck a number of pedestrians. According to some reports, 10 people, and according, as you're saying, they're unverified as yet, but the claim is that one person has died from their injuries. So I think the pictures you're getting are from one of the buildings in Times Square, and this is a photograph of what I've been seeing on Twitter as well, which is a saloon car that mounted the pavement at sufficient speed to end up propped up on its side at a diagonal bearing on one of the bollards of the sidewalk, and on the way onto that pavement it struck a number of pedestrians. Now, according to the helicopter pilot who was giving us, or CBS US television earlier, a different shot, a number of other incidents seem to have been unfolding on the way there, so that car may have struck other pedestrians on the way there, but that's not verified either.
Dominic, if I just ask our director to bring that still photograph back one more time. It would appear that first of all, this car was travelling at some speed, but it would appear to be supported by that metal pole, which one then presumes is part of a variety of security measures in place around buildings such as the NASDAQ to try and guard against incidents such as this.
Yeah, exactly. These are bollards, metal bollards, which are installed for security reasons. Also, I think you can see that concrete flour urn. That may well be also a device used to block the passage of any vehicle moving at speed and trying to get onto the pavement, and to try to carry out attacks like we've seen in Europe and other parts of the world carried out by terrorists. And what seems to have happened is this vehicle has hit the pavement at such speed it has ended up propped up on on one of these bollards, which gives you a good idea of the speed it was travelling at. Now, I think the point to make here is that if this was an accident, it is unlikely that any vehicle would be travelling at that kind of speed, such that it could end up propped up on a bollard unless the accelerator got stuck or something. So there is a possibility that this was a vehicle accident, but I think from what we're seeing here, the signs do seem to be pointing towards some form of foul play.
And just for those who do not know New York City in the way in which you will, Times Square, a magnet for tourists at this time of day, would have been relatively busy, one presumes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day in New York. Times Square is right in the heart of New York. It is the sort of buzzing heart of Manhattan Island. It is right in the heart of the theatre district. It is where these advertising billboards give this iconic look to Times Square. It's where the NASDAQ Stock Exchange is based. It's where a number of companies either have their headquarters on the square or nearby. And it's right in the middle of Manhattan Island. If you wanted to carry out an attack that was going to guarantee high-profile coverage, it is the kind of target location you would go for. Have to stress at the moment that we have no idea at the moment whether this was an accident or was a deliberate attack carried out to attract publicity for whatever cause it may have been carried out for. But it is the kind of place where there would be a lot of pedestrians. It's a beautiful hot day in New York. You would be guaranteed to have a lot of people on the pavement there. And so if you were to drive a vehicle into New York and ride up onto the pavement like this, you would be guaranteed to hit a fair number of people. The numbers we're hearing at the moment are 10 injured and an unconfirmed report that one person has died from their injuries. And these other unconfirmed reports from, as I say, a helicopter pilot flying a news chopper over the city, that there were other locations on the route where there just seemed to be some activity. And therefore this vehicle may have struck other pedestrians or carried out other kind of incidents en route on the way to Times Square where this attack or accident appears to have happened.
Dominic, thanks very much. Well, let's just remind you that which we're hearing from New York as we look at pictures of the car involved in this incident. A number of people, perhaps as many as 10, have been injured by this car coming off and ploughing into a group of pedestrians. A witness speaking to the Reuters news agency suggests that the driver's actions appeared intentional and that it was their belief that at least one person had been killed as a result. We'll have much more from New York after this.